There's nothing quite like a Ford Mustang, and plenty is different about this improved 6th generation version. What hasn't changed is the original model's mantra of plenty of power at an affordable price. That's served up both in this fastback coupe guise or in convertible form. In either case, you get a car that'll make you feel alive, and there's nothing quite like it. Respect the rumble.
Think Ford Mustang and you instantly imagine Steve McQueen, desert highways and the American dream, one which these days global buyers want to share. Now, since this 6th generation version was launched to world markets in 2015, it's become the world's best-selling sports coupe, with nearly 126,000 examples sold in 146 countries in 2017 alone. Now in this improved form, launched in 2018, it's sleeker, quicker, safer and more fun. But could you really justify one? American buyers have always been able to. From the moment the original Mustang was launched back in 1964, it was an instant hit. And it went on to be the fastest selling car in history, with more than 1 million examples finding homes in the first year and a half it was on sale. From then on, the Stang became an American institution, the muscle car all others were judged by, especially in the 5th generation guise launched in 2005. It was this version, styled to reflect the 60s original, that reignited worldwide interest in this model. Customers from around the globe soon queuing up to import it from the USA. Ford bosses took note. For years, they'd imagined the Mustang only as an American product, believing that other markets needed a less aggressive design of sports coupe, which is why, this side of the Atlantic, we got models like the Capri in the 70s and the Probe in the 90s. Hopefully, though, those kinds of coupes are now a thing of the past. Customers across the world have made it very clear that they love the Mustang just as much as the Yankee drivers do, which is why this 6th generation version was designed with international markets and right-hand drive in mind from the very outset. That is why buyers over here get a 2.3-litre EcoBoost 4-cylinder engine option as an alternative to the big old Coyote V8 you'd expect this car to have. As part of this mid-term revamp, the EcoBoost power plant gets more torque, while the V8 features more power and rev matching tech. Both units can now be ordered with a fiery active valve performance exhaust, MagneRide adaptive damping and a 10-speed automatic gearbox. Plus, this Ford at last gets a proper suite of camera-driven safety features, along with smarter looks and upgraded connectivity in its better quality cabin. Will all this be enough, though, to allow this modern Mustang to rival some of the best coupes and convertibles money can buy? Come on, let's find out.
Can't stop.
So, what's it like? Well, settle in, and whether you go for this fastback coupe or for the alternative convertible body style, a Mustang is, of course, very different from the kind of European hot hatch or sports car that you could buy for the same kind of money. Fortunately, though, when you fire up the engine, well, that sounds very different too. Now, this Mark 6 Mustang continues to be offered with a 4-cylinder option, but the vast majority of buyers prefer the thunderous 5-litre V8 which we've got here, which in this revised model gets a 30 PS power boost to 450 PS. Ford has at last got around to including an active switchable exhaust with this engine, so you can enjoy it all the more. In the early mornings, though, your neighbours may not, so there's a selectable quiet tailpipe setting should you want to keep a low profile. But that is always going to be difficult in a Mustang, even if you don't order yours with this in-your-face Orange Fury paint finish, the one that a third of all buyers go for. Even when you're not flexing your right foot, there'll be a mixture of envy and disapproving comment from the pavement as you drive by. And give the huge hunk of Michigan metalwork beneath the bonnet full beans, and people just stare. If you're not afraid of making a statement, or you simply don't care what people think, then this car will suit you perfectly. Conformity is something that it just doesn't hold with, especially in V8 form. In the modern era, almost any other engine of this size would be turbocharged, and it certainly wouldn't be available with manual transmission. Here, the normally aspirated stick shift formula feels deliciously old school, although it does require a bit of effort on your part if rapid progress is going to be maintained. Not a lot happens below 3,500 RPM, and if you prod the throttle in too high a gear, there's no low-end turbo torque to help you out, so you'll have to click back through the box and find a smaller cog to spin. Fortunately, that's something that you might want to do anyway, thanks to a solidly slick gear shift that's now improved by a redesigned two-part flywheel and embellished with rev matching technology that delivers smoother, faster downshifts accompanied by an emotive blip from that powerful engine. There is an automatic gearbox option, of course, and a much better one with this revised model, which dumps the previous unsatisfactory 6-speed self-shifter in favour of the 10-speed auto that Ford uses in its gigantic F-150 Raptor US market monster truck. Even this supposedly improved transmission hasn't got its head around modern dual clutch technology, but it does work reasonably well. It's happy to quickly drop down a couple of ratios when it's prompted by the steering wheel paddle shifters for nice, easy overtaking. Ah yes, overtaking, you'll enjoy that. Keep the revs buoyant and power builds instantly in company with a crescendo of noise, hurling you towards the horizon, and a top speed artificially limited at 155 miles an hour. Activated standard launch control system, and powering away from rest is as quick as you'd manage in a Porsche 911 Carrera, costing twice as much. 62 mph flashes by in 4.6 seconds in a manual fastback V8, or 4.8 seconds in an auto, and that's aided by a drag strip mode, which irons out the torque and power drop-off that you normally get between gear shifts, so it's just one seamless burst of acceleration. Even better though, and most brilliant of all if you're of a max power mindset, there's what Ford calls Line Lock. That's there to help you do burnouts, and it was developed out of US Mustang owners' love of drag racing. Line Out uses electronics that'll let you jam on the front brakes and spin the rear wheels at the same time, shredding your tyres for up to 15 seconds, as you would do if you were warming them up for ultimate grip on a drag strip. It's probably best not to try that on the high street though. In this revised model, Line Lock also features with the lesser 2.3-litre EcoBoost engine, which, like the V8, has been tweaked as part of this model update. And now, if you previously didn't like the idea of that 4-cylinder unit, the news that it now develops 290 PS, 30 PS less than it did before, will probably further confirm your disparaging perspective. Although Ford says it shouldn't, because torque has actually risen from 432 to 440 Newton meters. Hence the fact that this variant's performance is unaffected by that power reduction. 62 miles an hour from rest in a manual fastback model occupies 5.8 seconds en route to 145 miles an hour, while all the time a sound symposer that works through the stereo speakers attempts, a bit unsuccessfully, to add a bit of aural drama to the proceedings. Even so, the Blue Oval brand's engineers prefer that smaller engine, pointing out that with that lighter unit in the nose of the car, it turns into the corners more readily. As Mustang chief engineer Matthias Ton says, the EcoBoost version is the car you want, but the V8 is the car that everyone thinks they want. Well, perhaps. Of course, with a Mustang, any talk of cornering sharpness is somewhat relative. It absolutely feels its size when you're threading it down twisting secondary roads, so don't expect anything like the eager chuckability of a TT or an M4. Approach a drive with more realistic expectations though, and you might be pleasantly surprised. Earlier generation Mustangs were laughably inept around the bends, and the only fun that you could have in one when you were turning the wheel required a tyre-smoking test track to be close at hand. Due to a more rigid body and the addition of multi-link rear suspension to replace the previous crude leaf sprung setup, the Mark 6 model has proved to be more dynamically able, and things have been further improved with this revised car, which has thicker anti-roll bars, recalibrated shock absorbers, and a rear suspension which is stiffened with a cross-axle joint to reduce the unwanted movement at each corner that would normally lead to body flex. Thanks to all this, in the dry at least, the back tyres are kept firmly in contact with the road virtually all of the time, hence excellent grip and traction, further aided by the limited slip differential, which is standard with all Mustangs. It keeps all that power in check, so it's not wasted in wheel spin as you accelerate out of hard corners. If you're going to throw the car about like that, you're going to need to be familiar with the menu of selectable driving modes that this Mustang can offer. There's the drag strip launch control option we mentioned earlier, and all variants now get an extra My Mode, which saves your own favourite performance settings. Otherwise, it's as it was before, which means that away from the default normal setup, there's a choice of Sport Plus, Racetrack or Snow Wet options, all of which do the usual things that settings of this kind tend to do, tweaking throttle response, steering feel, stability control thresholds, and on the auto models, the gear shift timings too. Displays on the new 12-inch TFT instrument binnacle screen can change in tune with your preferred setting. Pay extra for a newly added extra cost feature, MagneRide Adaptive Damping, and these modes will alter ride quality too, giving you the option of a more comfort-orientated approach to bumpier surfaces. And you'll really appreciate that on those occasions when you're just not in the mood to play the hooligan. As a Mustang buyer, we think this is a box that you need to tick. The steering can be separately adjusted too. There are normal, sport and comfort options. Rather predictably though, none of them deliver the kind of sharp, responsive feel at the helm that you get in a really good European rival. But let's move on to something that's far more the kind of thing that you'd expect from a Mustang: track apps. Now this is a suite of performance features that really do allow you to enjoy yourself irresponsibly in this car, on a circuit of course. The functions are selectable via that colourful instrument binnacle screen once you've pressed this little pony designated button on the steering wheel. There's a lap timer of course, and an acceleration timer which allows you to measure acceleration times from 0 to a certain speed or distance. The brake performance meter works the other way, measuring your stopping time in seconds from either 60 or 100 miles an hour right back to 0. Everything in fact that you need for a perfect track day. On the subject of brakes, you're going to need those to be good in a performance car this powerful, weighing nearly 1.8 tons. Fortunately, they are. On first press, they feel a bit oversensitive, but they become powerful and progressive after that. All Mustangs sold over here come fitted with what Ford calls a performance pack, which primarily means that larger brakes are fitted than the ones used as standard in the US. There should be plenty in reserve when you press on the brake pedal in the 2.3 litre model, courtesy of 352mm front discs and 4 piston calipers. This V8 version has even larger 380mm stoppers with 6-pot Brembo calipers to cope with its greater power and performance. What else? Well, in true American style, this is a great long-distance car, especially with the MagneRide Adaptive Damping System fitted. Urban manoeuvring, of course, isn't its forte. The turning circle is vast, and all-round visibility is restricted, especially in the convertible version with the hood up. That fabric-topped model has an old-fashioned roof that you have to slow right down to a walking pace to activate, but it's quite quick to operate. The electric mechanism takes up to 12 seconds, but it requires you to manhandle a rather cumbersome latch to either lock or unlock the hood from the top screen rail at either the end or the beginning of the process. Still, old-fashioned values are what Mustang motoring is all about. Now, the US Navy once ran a recruitment advert that summed all that up in a nutshell. The Beach Boys, apple pie, the 67 Mustang, 3 things worth fighting for. And if you love this Ford, you'll still feel that way. You don't have to be a committed petrol head to know what this car is. In fact, Ford's so confident in the global recognition this model enjoys that the word Mustang doesn't appear anywhere on the bodywork. It helps, of course, that this iconic shape has been seen in so many films and TV shows. Most memorably, of course, the Bullitt movie and that car chase with Steve McQueen. This kind of instant recognition is priceless, and it explains why Ford's been so careful to keep the shape and style of the original 60s model while bringing it right up to date in this improved 6th generation guise. The heritage here might be more than 50 years old, but this modern Mustang looks as fresh as this morning's coffee. get up close and personal, and if you happen to be familiar with the original version of this 6th generation model, then you'll probably quickly clock the changes which have been made to this improved design with its lower bonnet line and restyled LED headlights. The restyled bumper gives the car a more menacing, square-jawed look, and there's a large front splitter that increases downforce and helps to keep the front end planted to the ground for greater stability. As before, the long aluminium bonnet has classic twin power vents, while the shark bite nose features a prominent hexagonal grille that's complete with integral black struts and this model's familiar galloping horse badge. Get all of this bearing down on you from the fast lane and you'll move over pretty quickly. And you would see this, a set of triple/tail light clusters quickly receding into the distance. They're separated by this large roundel in the middle of the boot, either the charging Mustang horse if the model's 2.3 litre powered, or as here, a big GT badge if you've opted for the 5 litre version. Down below there's a revised diffuser style under tray in the middle of the restyled lower bumper, and on this V8 there are large twin tailpipes on either side. A boot spoiler is now optional on this fastback variant if you want somewhere to rest your Budweiser at Owners Club events, but in our view it's unwise to mess with the purity of the original shape. In profile, the look remains distinctive. Strong twin side creases combined with wide shoulders and a noticeable set of rear haunches. The wheels are properly big too. 19-inch rims are standard on all variants, and a rocker shield has been added to the rear of the front wheel arch to improve underbody airflow and to reduce drag by up to 3%. Now, we think that this fastback coupe model is more iconic with its raked roofline and sculpted rear shoulders. The alternative convertible version, though, also has a distinctive sense of style with unique rear wings and a flatter boot lid, which together create a pleasing profile when the roof's down. That soft top model's roof mechanism does remain a bit old school though. It requires manual latching, and a couple of plastic trim panels have to be clipped into place to properly finish the retraction process, and that takes 10 seconds. So let's take a seat inside, where changes have been promised to the rather down-market interior which characterised the original version of Ford's 6th generation pony car design. Well, we'll see. Well, it's certainly an improvement. In this revised model, classier soft-touch materials feature for the door linings, and the door handles are now fashioned from aluminium. There's a fancier starter button too, and that pulses with beats that apparently mirror the resting heart rate of a pony. All of that's there to try to distract your attention from the fact that this is a cabin more appropriate to a lower price point than this. In its home market, this is a £25,000 car, and to be honest, you get that feel from some of the hard, scratchy trim materials used. Now, Ford's done its best to disguise this provenance with the standard inclusion of full leather upholstery and also this smartly informative Sync 3 infotainment screen, but that's not going to be enough to impress you if you come to this car fresh from experiencing, well, let's say an equivalent more upmarket version of the BMW 4 Series or the Audi A5. Still, it feels churlish to start being picky about a car that's effectively a national institution. Perhaps instead we should just continue to give thanks that this 6th generation version, unlike its predecessors, continues to be produced in right-hand drive form. Anyway, there are compensations. If you are a potential Mustang buyer, then you'll probably be someone who, well, quite likes this cabin's rather old-school feel. Now, the pre-facelift model's deeply cowled dials used to add to that, but they have now been replaced by the customisable, all-digital 12-inch LCD instrument cluster that you view through this classic dished 3-spoke sports wheel. The customisable bit relates to the way that you can tailor the display through 3 formats, each of which you can stick with or can be programmed to change with the drive mode selection. Normal shows you a couple of virtual dials, both with numerical middle readouts, separated by a central readout with digital speedo, tyre pressure, fuel economy and trip computer options. Go for the sport layout, and the rev counter extends across the top of the display. And finally, with the racetrack instrument layout, a broad rev counter band dominates the top of the screen. Now, the instrument binnacle display is also the access point for launch control and your exhaust mode settings, and a menu of Mustang track apps which allow you to time things like acceleration, braking and your circuit progress. Anything that this readout can't tell you will probably be covered off by the 8-inch touch-sensitive Sync 3 infotainment screen, which offers audio, Bluetooth phone and climate functions, plus it'll be your point of contact with the optional navigation setup. Now, many of the functions are operable via voice control, and as you expect, these also include connectivity with your smartphone to access apps and music using the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto systems. The DAB stereo is usually mated to 9 speakers dotted around the interior, but upgrading to the optional B&O Play audio system ups that tally to 12. More climate controls sit under this main monitor, and below these is a smartphone-sized area in front of the gear stick that provides both USB and 12-volt sockets. As for other storage space, well, there are small door bins and there's a rather restricted glove box, plus there's a useful storage box behind the conventional handbrake that incorporates USB and 12-volt ports. Further forward, there are double cup holders, although they aren't much use if you have a manual model, because if you put anything in these, they'll severely impede your access to the gear lever. What else might you need to know about this cabin? Well, the trio of silver-ringed air vents above the sync screen are smart, and the toggle switches in front of the gear stick for the various driving modes are a really nice retro touch. We also like the puddle lights that project the Mustang logo onto the pavement as you disembark at night. And the keyless entry system, which includes the clever Ford MyKey setup that allows you to program particular parameters into separate key fobs. Now, via this, you can lend your Mustang out, knowing that the user won't be able to access things like the Sport Plus and racetrack modes, for example. As you get comfortable inside, it's noticeable just how much space there is to move around in here. Now, this is a bigger car than its rivals, and you certainly feel that. And it's helped by the way that the deeply cushioned 6-way electrically adjustable leather seats are supportive but also luxurious, even if you go for the optional Recaro branded chairs that we're trying here. They're easy to position for a commanding view ahead too, although it is rather hard to see over the end of that long bonnet. That makes it all the more annoying that front parking sensors aren't offered. Forget any thoughts of having a commanding view behind though. Whatever body style you choose, rear 3/4 vision is really somewhat compromised, so you're really going to need the standard rear parking sensors and the reversing camera. Right, time to take a seat in the back. Now, that's not especially easy because the catch for pulling the seat back forward is awkward to reach and use, and when you do use it, the seat doesn't automatically slide forward as it would in a European rival, so you have to fiddle about with these seat-based buttons. Getting in is awkward thanks to this low roof line. And once you are in place, despite the fact this car is about the same length as a Ford Mondeo, you'll find that there's virtually no legroom at all unless the person in front is of less than average height. As for headroom, well, I mean, if your point of comparison is the cramped conditions you get in, say, an Audi TT or an Nissan 370Z, that won't bother you. If you come to this car from a rival like a coupe version of the BMW 4 Series or the Audi A5, though, you might be less forgiving. Whatever the case, kids may well see things differently. We've found that they absolutely love these close-fitting individual seats, sculpted as they are tightly around this large transmission tunnel. Parents will be pleased to note that ISOFIX child seat mounts and proper 3-point belts are included, although rather unforgivably they lack pre-tensioners. Getting a child seat in, though, would be a real challenge given the restricted aperture available to you once the front seat's folded forward for rear access. Finally, let's deal with boot space. Now, you might expect to have to compromise in this regard with such an uncompromising sports car, but think again. True, there is quite a high loading lip and the opening's fairly narrow, but you can't argue with the amount of space on offer, given the inevitable limitations of a car of this kind. This fastback coupe model will hold 408 litres in what the Americans would call the trunk. That's about the same as a rival Mercedes-AMG C43 Coupe, so you'll be okay with a couple of medium-sized suitcases. Unfortunately, Ford has forgotten to include any tie-down points, but you do get some extra space beneath the boot floor here because there's no spare wheel fitted, just this fiddly tyre mobility kit. If you need more room and you've got a fastback model like this one, it's possible to fold forward the 50-50 split rear seat, so longer items like skis can be accommodated. And unfortunately, to release the seat back, you have to go round and awkwardly reach into the car because no catches or pull ties are provided in the boot area for that purpose. The convertible model won't give you that option, but it can swallow 332 litres of cargo, roof up or down. And that's 20% more than a rival Audi TTS Roadster can, for example.
Can't stop.
The Mustang has always been a blue-collar icon of value for money in the USA, and Ford's just as keen for this car to be seen that way here. That was certainly the case when this Mark VI Mustang was originally launched here in 2015 at prices starting from around £30,000. Things are a little different now, though. Pricing for this revised model sits in the £37,000 to £47,000 bracket. Now, Ford claims to have done what it could to keep the asking figures reasonable. The Mustang's port of entry has changed from Germany to Merseyside, for example, and points out that even these higher prices can still represent impressive value when pitched against European rivals. We'll see that in a minute. Before we get into that, though, let's talk you through the range. Now, 4 in every 5 Mustang buyers choose this fastback coupe body style, but there is also a convertible version that's offered at a £3,500 premium. And 70% of customers want the 450 PS 5-litre V8 we're trying here, rather than the 290 PS 2.3-litre turbo 4-cylinder EcoBoost unit, despite the fact that this bigger engine costs £5,100 more. Preferences, though, aren't clear when it comes to transmission. We'd go for the 6-speed stick shifter we'd been trying here, but there's certainly a case to make for finding £1,600 more to get this revised model's new 10-speed auto. There are no fancier trim levels, but at the launch of this revised model, Ford also announced a special edition Bullet variant, finished in the same Highland green paintwork as the car that featured in that classic Steve McQueen film. Costing just over £47,000, the Mustang Bullet features unique high-gloss 5-spoke alloy wheels, a special interior, and a 12-speaker B&O Play audio system, and a slightly uprated 459 PS 5-litre V8 beneath the bonnet. Whatever your choice of Mustang, bear in mind you won't be able to buy this car at just any Ford dealership. You'll find this sports car only in the showrooms of the company's premium Ford store locations. Now, at this revised model's launch, there were 70 of these, and that's enough, says the brand, to ensure that 90% of the population will be within an hour's drive of one. If, having looked at the asking figures we've just given you, you're tempted to consider personally importing this car, as many European buyers used to have to do, then think again. True, US prices for the 4-cylinder model start at just $26,000, and that equates to just under £20,000, or around $33,000 for the V8, which equates to around £25,000. But of course, it's not as simple as that. You'd have to spend more on top of that to match a European level of spec, and in addition, you would have to find £1,000 for shipping and £500 for the individual vehicle approval certificate, which you would need to register the car. Then there's 10% import duty and 20% VAT. And at the end of all that, you'd have a left-hand drive car without a proper warranty. It really doesn't add up. The only case that you could make for personal import would be if you wanted one of the higher performance Mustang models, which Ford doesn't offer here. So principally, we're thinking about the track-focused Shelby GT350 and GT350R versions. On to rivals. Well, for us, the most obvious one in concept and execution is Chevrolet's Camaro. That's only available to special order here these days, but it's priced very similarly to a Mustang. It's not been as thoroughly developed for European tastes as this Ford, though. It doesn't have the same kind of warranty or dealer network backup, and it costs significantly more to run, so it's not a particularly tempting prospect. Which leaves prospective Mustang buyers pitching this car against, what? The 2.3-litre model would, we think, appeal to the kind of person who would otherwise buy something like a Nissan 370Z. That puts out 333 PS from its 3.7-litre V6 and is a coupe that would cost either quite a lot less than this Ford or maybe just a bit more, depending on whether you buy it in standard or uprated Nismo form. We'd also be tempted by the BMW M240i. That offers 340 PS for about the same kind of money as a 4-cylinder Mustang, although it's a slightly smaller car. An Audi TT 2-litre TFSI, that costs around £35,000 in S-Line Coupe form. That might also be an option. There you only get 230 PS, but the lighter weight means that performance is comparable with the base Mustang. Potential buyers of this Ford, though, are likely to be as dismissive of a TT as they would be of a smart-suited German hot hatch. Conceivably, though, a wilder shopping rocket like Honda's Civic Type R, that might be more likely to appeal. That's a car that in top GT form would save you nearly £4,000 and would take you through the curves much quicker. But let's forget about the four-cylinder Mustang, as most buyers evidently do, and concentrate on the value proposition this Ford can offer when a proper Coyote 5-litre V8 is installed beneath the bonnet. Now, the appeal here is obvious. A V8 Mustang costs from around £42,000, which makes this model by far the cheapest V8 performance car you can buy in our market. Aside from this Ford, if you want a V8 coupe, you'll need to find well over £60,000 for a Lexus RCF or a Mercedes-AMG C63. A BMW M4 has 6 cylinders and also costs over £60,000. The only other options available to you in this sector of the market also have 6 cylinders but deliver a lot less power, yet they still manage to cost much more than a 5-litre Mustang. A Mercedes-AMG C43 is 60 PS down and will set you back around £52,000. A smaller BMW M2 is 80 PS down and costs around £47,000. And an Audi S5 is nearly 100 PS down and costs around £49,000. In other words, whichever way you look at it, the gutsiest version of this Ford is brilliant value. If you agree and you've decided that this is a car that you simply have to have, then you'll need to know just how generous Ford has been with the standard spec. So let's take a look at that now. Now, stretch to this GT V8 and you get an active exhaust system featuring quad tailpipes and, on manual models, launch control for track use. Otherwise, the basic Mustang equipment package is pretty standardised regardless of engine choice. All European market models get something that you have to pay extra for in the States, a performance pack, and that includes improved cooling for the engine and larger brakes. For the 2.3-litre EcoBoost variants, this means 352mm front discs and 4-piston calipers, while the V8 gains 380mm stoppers and 6-pot Brembo calipers. Either way, these sit in large 19-inch black alloy wheels, finished in a double-spoke design on the 2.3-litre version, or with a multi-spoke finish on the V8. Other standard exterior features fitted across the range include full LED headlamps with LED fog lights, auto headlamps and wipers, and a rear view camera, plus power folding mirrors with puddle light brand illumination. A limited slip differential is standard too to help get traction down through the turns, while for the highway there's now adaptive cruise control, and that automatically maintains your distance to the car in front. Inside, owners get My-Colour configurable ambient interior lighting, dual zone climate control and a heated steering wheel, as well as a keyless start and entry system, along with a special My Key setup that allows you to program each of the 3 provided keys separately. So you can set up the 2 spares with restricted access to certain functions. So, for example, if you're lending the car out to your son or daughter, you can limit the top speed and prevent access to functions such as the Sport Plus and racetrack modes. That's if you're brave enough to let your kids drive your Mustang in the first place. Move inside and all models get leather-covered seats available in ebony, ceramic or tan finishes, all with 6-way electric adjustment. These chairs position you perfectly in front of a classically styled leather-stitched multifunction steering wheel. Through this, you glimpse a configurable 12-inch LCD instrument binnacle screen replacing the usual dials, and that can vary its display layout to suit the setting you've chosen from the standard selectable driving modes package. The instrument screen can also be set up to show your track apps options, the acceleration timer, the brake performance timer, the lap timer, launch control and the line lock feature for smoky burnouts. More sensible infotainment is provided by a Sync 3 system with its 8-inch centre dash colour touchscreen. This includes voice control, a 9-speaker DAB audio system, the usual Bluetooth phone features and smartphone connectivity via Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. On to options. The one we'd really want to recommend is the MagneRide adaptive suspension system, which was introduced with this revised model, set up able to adjust the dampers up to 1,000 times a second. It costs £1,600, but it'll really make your Mustang more day-to-day usable. Most owners opt to pay a similar amount for the grippy Recaro seats that we've been trying here, and the majority of buyers also add in one of the 4 optional custom packs, and they vary only with wheel style and the option of having or not having a chromed window surround if you have gone for this fastback body style. Otherwise, all the custom packs are much the same. They include an upgraded B&O Play 1000-watt 12-speaker premium audio system, a partial leather accent console, and the satellite navigation package that would otherwise be missing from the Sync 3 infotainment system. Each of these packs gives you climate-controlled cooling for the front upholstery too, although unfortunately you won't get that if you have already chosen the optional Recaro sports seats that we just mentioned. What else? Well, sat-nav and climate-controlled seats are also standalone options, and if you've gone for the 2.3-litre engine, we think you really have to treat yourself to the throaty active exhaust system. Practical touches you can add include branded boot liners, rubber floor mats, and various car covers. Otherwise, the key options relate to aesthetic features. Let's start with the paintwork. That's something that you're going to be paying extra for unless you want your Mustang finished in race red. That's the only standard colour. There are various premium colours to choose from, or you might like one of the exclusive shades, ruby red or this orange fury finish, which apparently accounts for up to 1/3 of all orders. Unfortunately, the dark Highland green paintwork, recognisable from that classic Steve McQueen bullet film, only features on the rare special edition version of the same name. To make your Mustang stand out even more, there are also body stripes in white or black. The black stripes can be had with a special Need for Green exclusive paint finish. On this fastback version, you can also order a black contrast coloured roof and a large rear spoiler. And if you haven't gone for one of the custom packs and you don't like the black alloys that are fitted as standard, you can alternatively select a set of silver forged 5x2 spoke rims of the same size. On to safety. Now, at its original launch, this Mark VI Mustang made headlines for all the wrong reasons in this regard, gaining an awful 2-star rating after Euro NCAP tests, which was partly due to the pre-facelift model's almost total lack of modern camera-driven safety kit. This time around, Ford's added some of this, and it's aiming, it says, for an improved 3-star rating. That doesn't sound a very lofty ambition, does it? After all, virtually all this car's rivals achieve 5 stars, but a Mustang can't achieve that because of its low roofline, which restricts headroom for folk at the rear, and because, surprisingly, Ford still doesn't fit seatbelt pretensioners at the back. Still, let's focus on the safety stuff that you can have, a roster that this time is headlined by autonomous braking. Ford's setup is called a pre-collision assist system, as usually it's one of those setups which scans the road ahead as you drive in search of potential accident hazards. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or perhaps you aren't able to, then the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. A lane departure warning system is also now standard, and that's complete with a lane keeping aid, which will imperceptibly steer you back into lane should you stray over the lane dividing lines on the highway. Otherwise, the safety standard is as before. Every Mustang has advanced track ESP stability control and emergency brake assist for the ABS brakes. There's also tyre pressure monitoring, ISOFIX child seat fastenings, and a hill start assist system to prevent the car from rolling backwards on steep inclines. Should the worst happen, this Ford's fitted with twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a driver's knee bag too. Another airbag's mounted inside the glove box lid to protect the front passenger's legs. Should any of these go off, the Sync infotainment system will automatically call the emergency services, advising them of your exact GPS location. And there's also a pop-up bonnet that springs into action if it detects an accident to better cushion any blow to a pedestrian. Take a deep breath here, because you're going to have to pay for your pleasures, at least if you go for this V8 version anyway. The combination of nearly 1.8 tonnes of curb weight and a normally aspirated 5-litre engine couldn't really deliver any other kind of end result, especially given that this bigger unit still hasn't been given an engine start-stop system. This time around, the Coyote V8 may be about 10% more frugal than it was previously, but in this fastback coupe model, it still only manages 22.7 mpg mpg on the combined cycle and 277 grams per kilometre of CO2, and it's fractionally worse than that if you go for the convertible. That's for the manual version. For the auto, the readings are slightly better, 23.3 mpg and 270 grams per kilometre in the fastback, and 22.5 mpg and 279 grams per kilometre in the convertible, although that's still nothing for Ford to crow about, and it doesn't have to be like this. Mercedes, for example, has proved that an equally powerful V8 can produce returns up to 50% better than that. Talking of 50% better returns, you can get these with a Mustang, but only if you opt for the alternative turbocharged 2.3-litre EcoBoost 4-cylinder engine option. This power plant works with an active grille shutter, which reduces aerodynamic drag at the front end. It's supposed to be more economic this time around, thanks to the reduced power and the increased torque. Now, possibly that is marginally the case, but it's difficult to tell because the figures this time round are measured with the new, more accurate WLTP, World Harmonised Light Vehicle Test Procedure. Now, this is the metering process which is now used to compile official fuel and CO2 stats, and it's one that usually has a reductive effect on efficiency readings in its efforts towards day-to-day realism, and that's certainly the case here. The Mustang EcoBoost model's fuel and CO2 returns have fallen slightly over what was recorded before. A 2.3-litre Mustang Fastback is now apparently capable of 31.3 mpg on the combined cycle and 199 grams per kilometre of CO2 in manual form, or 30.7 mpg and 205 grams per kilometre as an automatic. A 2.3-litre convertible manages 31 miles per gallon and 200 grams per kilometre in manual form, or 29.7 mpg and 211 grams per kilometre as an automatic. To be fair to Ford, these returns are no worse than you get from a rival Mercedes-AMG C43, although that Merc does have 2 extra cylinders, 4-wheel drive, and another 100 PS beneath the bonnet. Bottom line, well, if you go for this V8 Mustang rather than the 4-cylinder version, you'll cover around 8 fewer miles on every gallon, and you'll pump out around 78 grams per kilometre more CO2 into the atmosphere. Can you justify that? Well, most Mustang buyers seem to be able to. These people do need to consider more than just fuel and CO2 readings, though. A Mustang V8 attracts a first-year vehicle excise duty of £2,070, and followed by £140 a year from year 2. And Mustangs costing over £40,000 are liable for a £310 tax supplement that runs for 5 years, starting in year 2 of the car's life. And there's also the annoyance of frequent fuel station visits too. The 5-litre model's 61-litre fuel tank gives you a driving range of no more than about 270 miles between fill-ups. On to residual values. Now, you might expect a big, expensive V8 engined Ford badge sports car like this one to shed its value like falling autumn leaves. But not a bit of it. Thanks to buoyant demand and relative rarity value, industry experts expect a 5-litre V8 fastback model like this one to still be worth 45% of its original asking price after the usual 3-year, 60,000-mile ownership period. To offer a bit of perspective, a comparable rival like an Audi TTS would retain just 36% of its value. Now, you didn't expect that, did you? You will need to spec your car up carefully to maximise that return. Buyers will be looking for cars fitted with features like one of the optional custom packs, the Recaro sport seats, and the MagneRide adaptive damping system. The Mustang comes with the usual Ford 3-year, 60,000-mile warranty, and you'll have the option to extend that package for up to 2 more years and up to 100,000 miles at extra cost. Breakdown cover is included as standard for the first year. Maintenance might be pricey though, because servicing visits will need to be quite frequent. You're supposed to have a dealer visit every 12 months or every 10,000 miles, whichever comes around sooner. To help you budget ahead for this, Ford offers its Protect Premium plan for prepaid routine servicing, ranging from 1 year up to 3 years in duration. This package gets you included Europe-wide roadside assistance too. When it comes to insurance, a little surprisingly, the Mustang is rated a bit lower than its direct competitors. The 2.3-litre model is rated at Group 42 in fastback form, 4 groups lower than a rival Nissan 370Z, and in Group 45 as a convertible. Go for a fastback V8 like this one, and you're looking at Group 45. That's 3 groups lower than a rival Lexus RCF. A Mustang V8 convertible is rated at Group 47.
Can't stop.
I know you're no good for me, sang Martha Reeves and the Vandellas from the back of a Mustang convertible on the Dearborn production line back in '65. And a Mustang may not be. But if you yearn for the days when affordable sports cars were all about power, thunder and tyre-smoking machismo, you're going to want one of these just the same. Now that probably isn't what Ford wants to hear from us. This revised 6th generation model is, after all, billed as a more accessible Europeanised Mustang. Now that presumably references the enhanced safety, the better infotainment and the improved ride which is possible with the optional MagneRide adaptive damping system. Thing is, though, just as many of the changes made further embellish this car's loud, proud Yankee personality, the explosive switchable exhaust, the rev matching tech, even the multicolour instrument display screen with its video game graphics. Ultimately, it seems a Mustang just can't help being a Mustang, and that's exactly as it should be. Now, if the sales figures are anything to go by, then this one has certainly struck a chord, to the point where Ford must be wondering why it took so long to launch it globally. It seems that a certain kind of sports car buyer simply doesn't care about the fact that premium rivals are more agile, more efficient and better finished inside. Future Mustangs will improve in all these areas and may gain a wider audience as a result. But if and when that happens, people like us will always have a soft spot for this one. A BMW or Audi coupe is a very nice thing to have, but it'll never be the model you always promised yourself in the way that a Mustang can be. This is, after all, more than just a sports car. It's the heart and soul of Ford.